Bardstown Bourbon Company's latest collaboration with one of the, if not the largest producer of Indian single malt. This is Amrut. So Bardstown Bourbon Company, famously known for their collaborations not only here domestically, but globally, sourcing wine, single malts, etc., blending them into beautiful bottles. This is the Amrut. It is a single malt, an Indian single malt. I'm definitely excited to get into some guys. So without further ado, let's go. So the Bardstown Amrut is a straight rye whiskey that is finished in Amrut Indian single malt whiskey barrels and then blended with straight bourbon whiskey. Comes in at 110 proof. Mash bill on this one is quite interesting. It starts with 43% of a 9-year Indiana rye. It's 45% corn, 51% rye, and then 4% malted barley. Followed up by 20% of an 8-year Indiana rye that is 95% rye, 5% malted barley. 17% of a 14-year Kentucky whiskey that is 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley. 15% of a 10-year Kentucky whiskey that is 78% corn, 10% rye, 12% malted barley. And finally, 5% of an 11-year Kentucky whiskey that is 78% corn, 13% rye, and 9% malted barley. That is quite the mash bill. Again, coming in 110 proof. Let's get in the nose. So the nose on this one has this wow factor to me. It is very rich and savory on the nose. You do get a little bit of tobacco, but then I also start to get some like red fruit, some blackberry, a little bit further into the glass, some cinnamon further away, and then a little bit more of some of the that maltiness. It's not overly dominant. You definitely get that maltiness in there, but I think it's that dark fruit combination with some of that tobacco is really what's pulling through for me. So along with some of that cinnamon, there is like this little bit of like those ginger chews a little bit. It's the ginger note is very subtle, but again, further in it is more. It comes off more of a wine than a single malt. You do get that maltiness, but it really kind of reminds me of a wine finished whiskey, and then that like really nice tobacco note that's further into the glass. Beautiful nose on this one. Let's get in the palate. Cheers. The cherry tobacco leaf on the center of the palate is just, it's outstanding. It's definitely kind of in your face. And as it goes back, it does get sweet, more with those darker fruits. So that cherry kind of stops there across the center of the palate. And then as it gets into the back, you get more of like that plum and kind of blackberry. Slight kind of peppery finish there. It's more of a white pepper than it is a black pepper, which I'm quite surprised about. With the amount of rye that's in this. I know sometimes ryes can be, you can get that white pepper and black pepper, sometimes the mixture, but I'm not getting so much black pepper on this. It's more of a sharpness of like a white pepper. Front of the palate was fairly sweet. It kind of skipped over the front, but that middle and back of the palate on this one is really where this one shines through. Let's get a second sip. So Second sip, the front of the palate got a little herbal there. It's more of maybe a black tea kind of note there on the front, and then as it gets into the middle, that's really where like that cherry tobacco really starts to just kind of set and sink into the center of the palate. Then flowing into the back, that cherry and tobacco kind of stop, and it's just really it's almost like some sugared fruits, some dark fruits, again, like that blackberry, some of that plum, kind of mingling in with the sharpness of that white pepper. It's allowing it to really give it a nice finish on this one. I love the flavor profile on this, but one thing I don't really get is a lot of that Indian single malt influence. It's there, it's very subtle. You get it more on the middle and back of the palate. It kind of skips over that front. It's very subtle notes that you're getting from that Indian single malt. But again, that mixture of that kind of cherry tobacco, almost sugared, blackberries and plum, and then that mixture of that white pepper kind of flowing through, really makes for a really nice whiskey here. Let's get in the last sip. There it is. So some of that sweetness has kind of died down now. That tobacco note has started to fade away just a little bit. Some of that cherry is still there, but now that single malt is really starting to kind of play its role there on the center and back of the palate. It's kind of changed I feel like it's kind of changed the texture of the whiskey on that third sip. It does now slightly come off a little drying, but I actually like that because it's very viscous and kind of oily there on the front and middle of the palate. And it was on the back until that very last sip, and it started to get a little drying there on the back. But now I'm really starting to kind of get into that malty kind of flavor from that Indian single malt. Again, tobacco fade away, cherry still there. Those sugared fruits definitely still there on the back of the palate with that pepper. But then that single malt now has really started to kind of come forth there on the center and the back of the palate. This is a really nice whiskey. It's very interesting. I love how innovative they can be and their collaborations, again, not only here domestically, but globally. And I think this Amrut it's quite the whiskey. I would really like to get a bottle of this and see how it opens up over time to see what else I can kind of pull out of this one. But very nice job here by Bardstown Bourbon Company. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to give a big shout out to the team over at Bardstown Bourbon Company for supplying with the sample here to review on the channel. Guys, this is definitely a whiskey that I would buy. I think it's very unique, and it kind of falls into that whiskey profile that I like. I do like more of the darker whiskey than I do the light. I love that cherry tobacco note that I got. And then getting into the back, it's more of those dark, sugary kind of fruits with some of that white pepper. Got the maltiness there on the second sip, but more so on that third is really kind of where that kind of came through. Some of those other flavors started to fade away a little bit, and it brought forth more of that maltiness, which I was really intrigued by. I really like that flavor profile. This is definitely something I would buy. I'd like to get into it a little bit more and experiment with it to see what else I could pull out of this as it got some airtime. Hats off to you, Bardstown Bourbon Company, for another fantastic release. Guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. Also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Till next time, guys, stay dusty.